Breaking news, we are learning tonight that President Trump has more than once lashed out at his acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker. Trump was upset with Whitaker because prosecutors he oversees implicated the president in their Michael Cohen investigations. All right, so let's get to the bottom of exactly what this means. I want to go to Pamela Brown and Laura Jarrett, who are breaking the story. Pamela, let me start with you. What can you tell us?
Well, Aaron, on at least two occasions in the past few weeks, we have learned that the president has vented at his acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, about the Michael Cohen investigations. The president, angered by federal prosecutors referencing him in crimes that Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to. And according to multiple sources, Aaron, Trump was frustrated that prosecutors that Whitaker oversees filed charges that made him look bad. Now, we should note that none of the sources suggested the president directed Whitaker to stop the investigators, but these discussions between Trump and Whitaker underscore the extent that the president believes his attorney general should serve as his personal protector. And it also gives a glimpse into the strange dynamic, Aaron, of a sitting president talking to his attorney general directly about investigations he's potentially implicated in.
Yeah, which is hugely significant. Okay, Laura, tell me more about the instances here, the specific instances, because what happened and the timing of what happened is so important here. The president lashes out at Whitaker, two instances. Tell us more.
That's right, Aaron. So there's at least two discussions that we know about. So the first took place a few weeks after Whitaker took over for his former boss, Jeff Sessions. And Trump was angry after the special counsel, Robert Mueller, charged Michael Cohen with making false statements about the Trump Tower project in Moscow. We all remember that in late November. And you recall part of the prosecution description at the time was that Cohen talked with the president about the project well into the election season, contrary to his congressional testimony. Then, over a week later, federal prosecutors in Manhattan implicated the president in campaign finance charges officially in those charges that were brought against Cohen, describing how the president directed Cohen to make the payments in that sentencing memo. Well, it was pretty explosive. Now, Trump and his attorneys maintain that these payments are not illegal. Of course, other experts fiercely disagree. And we should add that while not confirming any of these conversations with the president, his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said in a statement to us that the president and his lawyers are upset about the professional prosecutors in the Southern District of New York going after a non-crime and the innuendo the president was involved. The Justice Department, Aaron, declined to comment for this story.
All right. So, Pamela, on some level, I guess it feels like this could be Jeff Sessions all over again.
Right. I mean, that's a good point, Aaron. It certainly does. The president, as you noted, had on numerous occasions gone after Sessions publicly and privately for recusing himself and not controlling the special counsel probe. And Whitaker, he had an acting attorney general who had publicly criticized the probe, the Russia probe, in TV appearances. And just this week, Whitaker refused to recuse himself from overseeing the Russia probe. He rejected an ethics advisor review that said he would not be perceived as impartial because of his public comments. And then we learned this week that the president's nominee to replace Sessions, William Barr, had sent a memo to Justice in June laying out why the special counsel should not investigate the president for obstruction. We learned this week that Barr discussed the memo with the president and mentioned it would likely come up during the Senate confirmation hearing.
So, Laura, what has Whitaker's role been in connection with these investigations? That's obviously going to be very crucial here for the president and for the country, for the citizens.
Absolutely. That's been the question all along. Since he came into office in November, it's always been an issue of what exactly has he been up to vis-a-vis the Mueller investigation. And until this week, Whitaker had actually not been briefed about the investigation, sources tell us. But he was given a heads up about the fact that the Cohen plea was coming in late November. And we learned this week that Whitaker will soon get a briefing now that he's done that ethics review, as Pamela mentioned, and he's decided for himself not to step aside from the investigation. Of course, the Deputy Attorney General's office, Rod Rosenstein, still manages it day to day, but those two could clash because Whitaker is now in the driver's seat. And so if they disagree with anything, Whitaker would overrule him.
All right. Thank you both very much with this new development. Significant development here is on the acting attorney general. Harry Sandick is with me, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District. April Ryan, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks, also with me. So, Harry, let me start. OK, obviously, the timeline here is going to end up being extremely crucial, and I want to get to that in a moment.
Sure.
Because the president's mad about certain things that Whitaker does. And then Whitaker does something the president wants him to do very much. But let's start here first with this reporting from Pamela and Laura on how angry the president is at Whitaker over campaign finance and the Trump Tower Moscow. How significant is that?
I think it's very significant. I think it's significant because these continued discussions with the people who are supervising the investigation, he doesn't have to come out and say, keep me out of the investigation. The anger that he shows afterwards reflects what his intent was and what his intent is going forward, which is to influence the investigation. But as we've seen, number one, Whitaker was sort of holding off pending the ethics review, which he's now come out the opposite way from Sessions and decided to not recuse from the investigation. And what we've also seen is that career prosecutors in the Southern District are going to do their job without fear or favor. They're not going to do something in hopes of satisfying the president or the acting attorney general.
So, April, what do you make of this, right? I mean, the two instances that Laura and Pam just walked through, right? The president being implicated in Trump Tower project in Moscow and the hush money payments to mistresses, but right before the election, right in the final days before the election. So, what does this mean that the president is weighing in on these things?
The president is very upset. I mean, and of late, when is the president not upset? But you've got to remember, one of the reasons why he's upset is because he distanced himself from this. He looks bad. We keep going back to that audio and that video of when the president was on Air Force One saying he had nothing to do with those payments. And then we now have these tapes from Michael Cohen. We've heard some tapes. And if we've heard just very little, imagine what they have within the investigation. And you have to remember this. Michael Cohen, even though the president tries to dismiss and diminish his relationship to him, Michael Cohen was very critical to this president for a number of years. He understood he knows what's going on with the foundation, the alleged illegal activities with the foundation, with the Trump Foundation. He also knows the Trump Tower Russia meeting. And, Michael Cohen, and people forget, Michael Cohen also brought to the president very key people that the president really relied on. Some people maybe unscrupulous, some people maybe professional. But Michael Cohen was also the person who brought a lot of the black thinkers or leaders that the president would like to call to him. So this president doesn't like it, but there are too many tentacles that intertwine both of them. And he may be upset, but he's upset because it's being revealed.
And Harry, to this point, though, now let's enter the timeline.
Yep.
Whitaker does these things regarding campaign finance, Michael Cohen, Trump Tower, Michael Cohen. The president's upset, expresses that frustration. Then ethics advisor reviews, says, you know what, Whitaker, you've made negative comments about this probe. You should recuse yourself. Whitaker does not. Is he doing it to try to make up to the president? Try to say, look, don't worry, I'm still okay? I mean, when you put that timeline together and his willingness to overrule the ethics panel, what do you think?
I think, number one, he's absolutely trying to curry favor with the president. The president was angry when Sessions recused himself, and he's not going to make that mistake. Number two, from the timeline that's been laid out tonight, it certainly seems as if it's in response to the president's expression of anger, that now that he's cleared by the ethics review, or sort of cleared, he actually cleared himself. I believe the ethics opinion was...
He overruled the review, which was you should recuse.
Exactly. So he's now going to wade into this, and we may well see him try to prove his worth to the president in ways that he didn't before.
I mean, April, this is the acting attorney general, right?
Right.
Whitaker. Now, we've got William Barr, Trump's pick to formally take over the job, right? We now know that he wrote in a memo to justice officials earlier this year that Mueller's inquiry was fatally misconceived, referring specifically to the obstruction aspect of it. This is pretty clear that he also agrees with the president, right? I mean, it's pretty... Is the president clearly trying to stack the Justice Department with people who are going to go in and just fix this probe for him?
Well, you know, the president will say he will never try to stack the Justice Department, but it sounds like loyalty. You know, if it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You know, but what I'm hearing from sources very close to this White House, Republican sources, they're telling me the president is still mad right now because all of this with Barr and Whitaker, it's getting too much attention. And I hear that the president is very upset mostly right now because Whitaker, all this recusal stuff, to recuse or not to recuse, and he's not recusing himself. And with Barr, we'll see how this all plays out. The president wants someone who can change the dynamic of the forward-moving train called the Mueller investigation. And will Barr or Whitaker be able to do it? I don't think so. It's gone too far.
Well, yeah, I mean, and now because anything they do would be perceived as obviously biased and being done because they're beholden to the president. Thank you both very much.